It began with a grave that opened and a village that forgot how to breathe. Bethany had been heavy for 4 days. The mourners had come and gone in waves. The neighbors had pressed food into Martha's hands. Mary had sat on the ground, stunned into silence by a world that no longer had her brother in it. The tomb's stone was rolled across the mouth, and with it the finality everyone knows. This is what death does. Then Jesus came up the road. Martha met him first. "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." It sounded like hope in torn clothing. He answered her with something bigger than comfort, a promise and a name. "Your brother will rise again." She thought of the last day, the final judgment. He meant now, and he meant himself. "I am the resurrection and the life." They went to the tomb. Mary followed, weeping, the crowd with her. The stone scraped as men shouldered it aside. The smell of burial spices and 4 days' silence rushed out. Jesus wept, God's tears on dusty ground, and then called into the dark, "Lazarus, come out." A heartbeat. Another. Then the soft, wrong sound of a dead man's feet. Lazarus appeared, wrapped in linen, face bound, shuffling toward the light he wasn't supposed to see again. "Unbind him," Jesus said. Martha's laugh sounded like a sob breaking into joy. Mary's hands shook as she pulled cloth from her brother's face. The village exploded into astonishment. News does not respect walls. The story ran downhill into Jerusalem and slid through lanes toward the temple courts. Word reached the Sanhedrin, the ruling council that lived where religion and politics share a desk. The miracle was not received as worship, it was received as a threat. They convened. Oil lamps glowed, the late light lay across polished stone, voices rose and fell with anxiety. "What are we accomplishing?" a man said. "This man is performing many signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him. Then the Romans will come and take away both our place and our nation." It was not a hypothetical fear. Festivals packed Jerusalem with pilgrims, and Rome kept a nervous hand on the sword. Uprisings began with rumors and crowds. The council's power balanced on a thin edge called peace. Caiaphas, the high priest that year, ended the debate. His voice cut the room into silence. "You do not realize that it is better for you that one man die for the people than that the whole nation perish." It sounded like policy. John would later hear prophecy underneath. The line between caution and conspiracy was crossed. From that day, they planned not how to answer Jesus, but how to remove him. He knew. John says simply that Jesus no longer walked openly among the Jews, but withdrew with his disciples to a town near the wilderness, to Ephraim. Rock, wind, quiet. He waited while Jerusalem swelled with Passover travelers, while families led lambs up the hills, while the city tuned itself to sacrifice. 6 days before the feast, he came back to Bethany, to a home now famous for a man returned from the dead. They held a dinner in his honor. Lazarus reclined at the table. Martha served with the brisk tenderness of someone who has learned how short a meal can be. Mary entered carrying an alabaster jar of pure nard, imported fragrance heavy as a year's wages. She broke it. The scent leapt into every corner of the house as she poured it over his feet. She wiped them with her hair. It was humility so low the proud could not bear the sight of it. Judas Iscariot, the treasurer whose fingers remembered coins, objected with piety that rang hollow. Jesus silenced him. "Leave her alone. She has kept this for the day of my burial." The perfume clung to the room. The word burial clung to the air. Crowds came, not only for Jesus, but to see Lazarus. The chief priests added another name to their ledger. Kill the evidence, and the testimony falls quiet. The arithmetic of fear is always the same. The next day, Jerusalem became a single shout. Jesus entered the city riding a young donkey, Zechariah's image of a king who refuses the chariot. People cut palm branches, laid cloaks on the road, and cried out, "Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the King of Israel." The sound poured through the colonnades, up the steps, over the stones of the Temple Mount. The Pharisees watched from the margin, bitter and tired. Look, the world has gone after him. Greeks, pilgrims from far cities, asked to see him. He answered with a picture that sounded like farming and fate. A grain of wheat must fall into the earth and die, or it remains alone. If it dies, it bears much fruit. He spoke of being lifted up, and the crowd caught the edge of it. How can the Messiah die? A voice came from heaven. Some said thunder. Others said an angel had spoken. Jesus told them the voice was for them, then slipped from public view. The plot tightened. Orders leaked through alleys and courtyards. Anyone who knew where he was should report it. They needed a moment away from crowds, a place where arrest would be spectacle to no one. They needed someone inside the circle to draw a map in the dark. Judas went to them. John writes it without soft focus. Satan entered him. 30 pieces of silver clinked into a purse, the price of a slave hammered into an agreement. Judas watched for an opening only friends would see. The meal came. An upper room had been arranged. The hour had turned the city into a hum of prayers and knives and fire. Jesus rose from the table, tied a towel, poured water into a basin, and knelt. One by one, he washed the disciples' feet, their cracked heels and dust-caked toes, the feet that had followed him across Galilee and Judea. When he finished, he put on his garment and told them exactly what he meant. "If I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's." Greatness in this kingdom descends. Trouble moved across his face like a cloud. "One of you will betray me." The room bristled with whispers. Peter signaled to the disciple leaning close to Jesus. "Ask who." "It is he to whom I will give this morsel," Jesus said, and handed bread to Judas, son of Simon Iscariot. After Judas took it, John says, Satan entered him. "What you are going to do quickly." Judas went out. John adds the line every preacher knows how to pause on, and it was night. With the door closed, Jesus spoke words that would light centuries. "Now is the Son of Man glorified. Where I am going you cannot come. A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another, as I have loved you." Peter promised loyalty. Jesus predicted the rooster would announce the truth before morning. He told them not to let their hearts be troubled, spoke of his Father's house with many rooms, said he was going to prepare a place and would come again. Thomas asked for directions. Jesus said, "I am the way and the truth and the life." He promised another advocate, the Spirit of truth, who would be with them and in them, who would teach them and remind them of his words. "My peace I give to you, not Rome's, not the world's." On the way out, he spoke of vine and branches, of abiding and bearing fruit, of love and obedience. He warned them the world would hate them, that some would kill in the name of God and call it faith. He promised sorrow would turn to joy, prayer would take on his name and power, and their scattering would not unmake him. Then he lifted his eyes and prayed, not a whisper, but a doorway into the eternal conversation, for the Father's glory, for the disciples' protection and sanctification in truth, and for everyone who would believe through their message, that they might be one, so the world would know the Father had sent the Son. They crossed the Kidron Valley and entered a garden, a place he often met with them. Judas knew it. He arrived with a detachment of soldiers and temple officers, lanterns swinging, torches flaming, swords hungry for justification. Jesus stepped forward. "Whom do you seek?" "Jesus of Nazareth." "I am," he said. The words bowed the arresting party backward. They regrouped. He asked again, and then secured his friends with a shepherd's bargain. "If you seek me, let these men go." Peter did what fear and love do when they don't understand purpose. He drew a sword and swung. The high priest's servant, John names him Malchus, lost his right ear to the blur of torchlight and steel. Jesus stopped Peter. "Put the sword away. Shall I not drink the cup the Father has given me?" They bound him. They took him first to Annas, the elder statesman of high priestly power, who questioned Jesus about his disciples and teaching. Jesus pointed to the record. "I have spoken openly in synagogues and in the temple, where all the Jews come together. I have said nothing in secret. Ask those who heard me." A guard struck him for speaking truth to borrowed authority. The line hangs in the air. If I said what is wrong, bear witness to the wrong. But if right, why do you strike me? Annas sent him to Caiaphas. While the proceedings moved along their predetermined track, Peter hovered in the courtyard, warming himself at a charcoal fire. A servant girl tilted her head and asked if he was one of the man's disciples. "I am not," another voice asked. Again, he denied. Then a relative of Malchus narrowed his eyes. "Didn't I see you in the garden with him?" And Peter denied a third time. The rooster wrote morning across the sky with a single cry. Peter went out and wept where no one could see. At daybreak they brought Jesus to the governor's headquarters. They would not go inside. Entering a Gentile residence would defile them for the feast. So Pilate came out. "What accusation do you bring against this man?" The answer was more posture than charge. "If he were not doing evil, we would not have delivered him to you." Pilate told them to judge him by their law. They said their law did not allow execution. Rome had to close the circle. Inside, Pilate asked the question on every official's lips. "Are you the king of the Jews?" The conversation that followed did not fit his categories. Jesus spoke of a kingdom not from this world. No cohort of armed men to rescue him, no political machine to wheel and deal. He said he had come to bear witness to the truth, and that everyone who is of the truth listens to his voice. Pilate's reply is weariness dressed as wisdom. What is truth? He went back out and told the waiting leaders what he had found. No guilt. There was a custom: release a prisoner at the Passover. Pilate offered the crowd a choice. Jesus, called the King of the Jews, or Barabbas, a robber who had taken part in an uprising. The priests moved like wind through grain. The answer gathered and hardened. Not this man, but Barabbas. In that exchange, innocent for guilty, giver of life for taker of it, the plot reached its necessary endgame. The alliance had done its work. Religious fear and political caution, public theater and private deals, betrayal for silver, law bent to keep the peace. John leaves us at the hinge. Barabbas walks free. Jesus stands where Rome puts men who refuse its claims. The council has preserved its place. The governor has preserved his calm. The disciples, scattered, will learn what it means that the hour has come. We are at the threshold. The gospel has been naming since Lazarus unwrapped his face. A death chosen, a cup accepted, a cross not yet lifted, but already certain. Read the evidence list again. A miracle near Jerusalem ignites a council meeting. Caiaphas decides that saving the nation requires sacrificing one man. Orders go out to report his location. Judas, one of the 12, becomes the map. An upper room and a basin define power by service, love by obedience. A prayer opens heaven. A garden closes around torches and rope. Annas and Caiaphas keep the machinery moving. Peter's courage cracks and then repents. Pilate tries to locate a threat and finds only a truth he cannot hold. Barabbas, who should die, lives. Jesus, who should live, is handed over. This is the crime. Religious and political powers, usually rivals, joined hands to execute a righteous man. They did it in the name of order, nation, and piety, and they did it precisely as they prepared to eat the feast that remembers deliverance. And here is the gospel's counterclaim. None of it happened outside purpose. The conspiracy did not derail the plan. It delivered it. The hour arrived not by accident, but by appointment. The cross stands just beyond the final line of John 18, and the empty tomb will rise beyond that. But the plot is complete. Thank you for listening to Divine Crime. Subscribe for more true stories from the most dangerous book ever written.